You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. It's late. Your phone is sitting beside you, but you already know what happens if you pick it up. You check your bank account. You see the number. Then you open Instagram. Someone you went to school with just bought a house. Someone else is on vacation. Someone is talking about their investment portfolio. And suddenly, without realizing it, you're doing the math. You look at your own life and wonder, am I actually getting anywhere? You work. You earn money. You try to save. Maybe you even invest. But somehow, financial freedom still feels like something that belongs to people who earn 3 times your income. And this is where most people make the first mistake. They think wealth is primarily an income problem. It isn't. Because there are people earning $50,000 a year who are quietly becoming wealthy, and people earning $500,000 who are still terrified to stop working. The difference isn't always intelligence. It isn't even income. It's structure. Because wealth doesn't grow in a straight line. It grows in stages. And there are 3 numbers that can completely change the way you think about your financial life. The first is $10,000. The second is $100,000. And the third isn't a number in your investment account at all. It's a ratio. The ratio between the money your life requires and the money your assets can produce without your labor. Once you understand these 3 thresholds, you stop asking, how do I make more money? And you start asking a much more powerful question. What financial threshold am I trying to cross next? And that changes everything. Because the person we're going to follow through this story isn't rich. Her name is Maya. She's 32 years old. She works in marketing. She earns about $68,000 a year. After taxes, rent, transportation, food, insurance, and everything else life throws at her, there's not a lot left. Maya has around $2,000 in savings. No investment portfolio worth mentioning, and a small amount of student debt. From the outside, she doesn't look like someone who's building wealth. But Maya has something many people never develop. A target, not a vague dream of being rich someday. A specific number, $10,000 invested. And that number matters for a reason most people don't understand. Because the first $10,000 isn't really about the money. It's about what happens inside your brain when you finally have something working for you. Think about the difference between pushing a heavy shopping cart and pushing it after the wheels finally start moving. The effort is still there, but the experience changes. That's what happens when you begin investing consistently. At first, every dollar comes from you. You put in $100, then another $100. You look at your account, and it feels painfully slow. You think, at this rate, I'll never get anywhere. And that thought is exactly why so many people quit. Human beings are wired to prefer immediate rewards. Behavioral economists call this present bias. You value what you can have today more heavily than something you might receive years from now. That's why spending $100 today feels real, while investing $100 for your future feels almost imaginary. Maya knows this feeling. She has a bad month. Her car needs repairs. Her friends invite her on a weekend trip. And suddenly, the $300 she planned to invest feels much more useful somewhere else. This is the moment when most people rely on discipline. Maya does something different. She removes herself from the decision. She automates the investment. Money leaves her account the day after payday. She doesn't negotiate with herself. She doesn't wake up every month and ask whether she feels motivated to invest. The system makes the decision before her emotions get involved. And slowly, something strange happens. The money begins to grow. Not dramatically, not at first, but psychologically. Maya opens her account one day and sees $3,000, then $5,000, then $7,500, and eventually $10,000. That's when the first psychological shift happens. For the first time, she isn't just saving money. She owns an asset that is capable of producing more money. The machine has started. And this is why $10,000 is such an important milestone. It creates a visible separation between you and the money you earn. Before this point, your financial life is almost entirely dependent on your labor. You work, you get paid, you spend, you repeat. But now, there's a small engine running in the background. Your job is still powering your financial life. But it isn't the only thing doing the work anymore. And this is where compounding becomes psychologically powerful. People talk about compound interest as if it's a mathematical trick. It isn't. It's a behavioral advantage. Once you see your money earning money, you become more willing to leave it alone. The temptation to spend decreases because you're no longer looking at an abstract number. You're looking at something you've built. This is where identity begins to change. You're no longer someone who is trying to save. You're someone who invests. That sounds like a small difference. It isn't, because people tend to behave consistently with the identity they've adopted. The person who says, "I'm trying to get better with money," can still make exceptions every weekend. The person who thinks, "I'm an investor," starts asking different questions. Does this purchase help or hurt the machine? Am I buying something I actually value? Would I rather have this now or own another piece of my future? The money is changing. But more importantly, Maya is changing. And that leads to the second threshold, $100,000. Now, before you dismiss this number as impossible, understand what it represents. The first $10,000 teaches you how to build the machine. The next $90,000 teaches you how to stop sabotaging it. Because once you have meaningful assets, a new enemy appears: lifestyle inflation. And lifestyle inflation is one of the quietest wealth killers in modern life. You get a raise. You upgrade your apartment. You earn more. You buy a nicer car. You earn even more. You start eating out more. Your expenses rise. Your income rises. And somehow, you're still waiting for the moment when you finally feel financially secure. This is the hedonic treadmill. Psychologists have repeatedly observed that humans adapt to improvements in their circumstances. The new car feels incredible. For a while, the larger apartment feels exciting. For a while, then they become normal. And once they become normal, you need something else to create the same emotional response. That's how a higher income can disappear without ever making you wealthy. Maya gets a promotion. Her salary rises from $68,000 to $82,000. And this is the moment when her story could go in two completely different directions. She could let her lifestyle rise with her income, or she could let her investments rise faster than her lifestyle. She chooses the second, not because she becomes miserable. She still enjoys her life. She simply refuses to turn every raise into a permanent expense. Instead, she increases her automated investment. The machine gets bigger. And then something happens that almost nobody experiences at the beginning of their financial journey. The market starts contributing meaningful amounts of money. Let's say Maya eventually reaches $100,000 invested, and her portfolio earns a hypothetical 7% in a given year. That's $7,000. Maya didn't have to work an extra week for that money. She didn't need a second job. She didn't negotiate a raise. Her capital simply did what capital does. It produced a return. Now imagine Maya is still contributing $10,000 a year herself. The difference is becoming visible. Her personal effort might add $10,000. Her investments might add another $7,000. And suddenly, the machine is doing almost as much work as she is. This is the phase change. And this is why $100,000 matters. Not because it's a magical number. It isn't. The exact threshold will be different for everyone. But psychologically and mathematically, something important happens when your invested capital becomes large enough that market growth begins to rival your annual contributions. At $10,000, a 7% return is $700. At $100,000, it's $7,000. At $500,000, it's $35,000. At $1 million, it's $70,000. The percentage didn't change. The machine got bigger. And this is the part most people don't appreciate. Your first $100,000 is often the hardest. Not because the market is against you, because you are. You're the one supplying almost all of the momentum. You're fighting your own impulses, your own lifestyle, your own impatience, your own desire to look successful before you actually are. But once you cross that threshold, the mathematics begins to feel different. Maya can see it. 5 years earlier, she was staring at her bank account wondering why she couldn't get ahead. Now, she opens her investment account and realizes something almost uncomfortable. Her money is becoming more productive, and she doesn't need to work harder for that to happen. She just needs to avoid getting in the way. But there's a trap here, and this trap is responsible for keeping many high earners permanently dependent on their jobs. Because building wealth isn't only about increasing your assets. It's also about controlling the size of the life those assets have to support. This brings us to the third threshold, the one that actually defines freedom. Imagine two people. Both have $1 million invested. The first person spends $100,000 every year. The second spends $40,000. On paper, they're equally wealthy. In reality, they're living in completely different worlds. If their investments generate enough passive income to cover $40,000 in annual expenses, the second person has something the first person doesn't. Optionality, the ability to walk away, the ability to take a lower-paying job, the ability to work part-time, the ability to say no, the ability to survive a bad year without panicking. This is the deeper meaning of financial independence. It's not really about becoming rich. It's about making your required number small enough that your assets can carry it. Think of your financial life as a bridge. On one side is your labor. On the other side is freedom. Your investments are the bridge. But the heavier your lifestyle becomes, the stronger that bridge has to be. If your life costs $100,000 a year, you need a much larger bridge. If your life costs $40,000, you need less. That's why two people with identical investment portfolios can experience completely different levels of freedom. The real question isn't, how much money do I have? It's, how much does my life require? This is where Maya starts thinking differently. She realizes that financial independence isn't a finish line floating somewhere in the distance. It's a mathematical relationship. Her expenses are one side. Her passive income is the other. And the closer those two numbers get, the more freedom she has. This is also where something fascinating happens psychologically. The goal becomes less about consumption. Maya no longer wants a higher income simply so she can buy more expensive things. She wants income because it gives her options. She wants her investments to cover her basic needs. Not necessarily every luxury. Not every vacation. Not every desire. Just the foundation. Housing. Food. Utilities. Insurance. Transportation. The things she needs to live a normal life. Because once your assets can cover your baseline expenses, your relationship with work changes. You can still work, but you don't have to work from the same place of fear. And that distinction is enormous. Research from the Federal Reserve has repeatedly shown that financial well-being isn't simply determined by income. People's financial security is also shaped by savings, debt, and whether they can handle unexpected expenses. In other words, earning more can help. But resilience comes from structure. That's the part nobody sees when they're scrolling through someone else's life online. You don't see their monthly burn rate. You don't see their debt payments. You don't see how much of their income disappears the moment it arrives. You only see the surface, the car, the house, the vacation, the number. And that's why social comparison is so dangerous. You compare your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. Maya eventually stops doing that. Not because she suddenly stops caring about money, but because she finally has a better scoreboard. She's no longer asking, am I richer than them? She's asking, am I closer to my next threshold? $10,000, then $100,000, then the point where passive income covers the life she actually wants. 3 thresholds, 3 psychological transformations. The first changes your behavior. The second changes the mathematics. The third changes your relationship with work. And notice what isn't on the list. You don't need to become a millionaire overnight. You don't need to predict the next stock market winner. You don't need to earn an extraordinary salary. You don't even need to live like a monk. What you need is a system that moves you deliberately from one threshold to the next. Because every threshold creates a new reality. At $10,000, you prove that you can build capital. At $100,000, your capital starts becoming a meaningful contributor. And when your passive income covers your baseline expenses, work becomes a choice rather than a requirement. That's the real destination, not a number on a spreadsheet. A change in what you are allowed to say no to. Now imagine Maya 5 years from today. She's 37. Her income is higher. Her investment account is significantly larger. But the most important thing is that her lifestyle didn't grow at the same speed. She still enjoys restaurants. She still travels. She still buys things she wants. But her entire financial life is no longer built around increasing consumption. She built a floor before raising the ceiling. And now, when something goes wrong at work, she doesn't immediately panic. When the economy slows down, she doesn't feel quite as trapped. When an opportunity appears, she can consider it. Because her money is no longer just sitting there. It's working. And perhaps the most important change is invisible. She sleeps differently. Because somewhere along the way, she stopped asking whether she was doing well enough. She started asking a better question. Am I crossing the next threshold? That's a question you can answer. You can measure it. You can plan around it. You can build your life around it. And that's what makes this framework so powerful. Financial independence isn't something that mysteriously happens to a lucky person one day. It's something you can reverse engineer. You can calculate your expenses. You can calculate your savings rate. You can estimate the capital required to support your baseline lifestyle. You can automate your investments. You can protect your progress from lifestyle inflation. And you can focus on the next threshold instead of obsessing over the final destination. Because the person who is $2,000 away from $10,000 doesn't need to think about $1 million today. The person who just crossed $100,000 doesn't need to panic about retirement tomorrow. And the person whose investments cover half of their essential expenses is already living a fundamentally different financial life than the person whose investments cover none. Progress compounds too. Not just money, confidence, knowledge, habits, identity. The first $10,000 changes the way you see yourself. The first $100,000 changes the way your money behaves. And eventually, when your passive income covers the cost of your life, you realize that freedom was never about having the most money. It was about needing less of it to control your own time. So tonight, don't ask yourself whether you're rich. Don't ask whether you're behind. Ask yourself one question. What is the next financial threshold I need to cross? Maybe it's $10,000 invested. Maybe it's $100,000 in net worth. Maybe it's getting your passive income to cover 25% of your essential expenses. Whatever it is, name it, write it down, and build your entire financial system around reaching it. Because wealth doesn't usually arrive all at once. First, you build the machine. Then you let the machine grow. And eventually, you realize the machine has been quietly buying you something money was never really about in the first place. Your time. If this video changed the way you think about building wealth, like this video and subscribe to Weston Wealth, because the more people see this, the more people can start building financial freedom on purpose. And if you're serious about crossing your next financial milestone, comment below with the number you're working toward: $10,000, $100,000, or financial freedom. I will see you in the next video.